Right, thank you very much. A very good afternoon to you all, ladies and the few gentlemen here present. So it was a very interesting session for me, the one that we just had, and listening to all the contributions, particularly when you were talking about the issue of sanitary wear, because it is an issue that really affects young people, and particularly young women. So now the first thing that I want to say is that the subject of the economic emancipation of women is a power subject. We cannot talk about women becoming powerful and women becoming leaders if we do not talk about their economic emancipation. So it is quite instrumental and quite essential that we are having this conversation, that women must be at the forefront of where they get their money, how they use their money. We must have these open conversations, and it must not start when women are already much older, but we must start having these conversations with children, little girls and young women. So the first thing I want to say is that I am the byproduct of the powerful women who have come before me and who have helped me. I tell everyone that I was raised by a single mother who believed in me irrationally so, that she was willing to make the provisions to make sure we had everything in alignment with education, food, shelter, even though my father had left. So it is quite essential to invest in women because women stay. When things are difficult, women sacrifice. I watched my mother take time, money and resources out of the prime of her life to sacrifice for us. And this is why it is important for us to have these conversations, because women stay. Now, I was doing a research as a research assistant with a lecturer from Women's University on internal savings and lendings clubs. And what we discovered was that whenever there are female households and whenever these women are getting income, these communities that have more female-headed households that get income are more likely to get out of poverty than when it's a man. We always have to understand that this is why it is important and it is instrumental for us to invest in women. I recently had the privilege to meet Gracia Michelle, and she told me that it is you, the young women, who now matter. We are now focusing on you, the young women, and we must be focusing so much as to how much we're investing in the young people. Now, coming back to the issue of the future of young women, fostering innovation, creativity, collaboration, communication, and digital marketing. I will start by then saying that we need to understand the importance of creativity and innovation towards making lives better for women. When we talk about creativity, we are talking about doing things that are inventive, things that have never been done before. I've often said that when the women's movement, we sort of catch things right at the top. But we must remember that patriarchy is something that precedes us 1,000 years ahead. Men have always been doing this. It has been their habit of dominating. We must remember that if we want to emancipate and empower the young women, we must take a new approach. And what is this new approach? We must always start when our children are young. I contribute much of who I am in terms of my confidence and my outspokenness to the fact that I had a mother who would tell me, get up and say something. A mother who would tell me, no, even if they are men and they are boys, get up and say something. But sometimes when we see the young women standing in front of men, we sexualize them. We say, we want women who stand and speak in front of the men. And it does not start when we are much older, it starts when we are younger. It's very simple. When your children come home from school, tell them to stand up and tell them about their day in a speech-like format. Train them public speaking in your houses, because these are the essential skills that cause women to get into parliament on proportional representation, and they don't even say a maiden speech in the whole 2 terms that they are in parliament. We need women who stand up and speak, and we must begin to build these essential skills. The innovative aspect comes in the knowledge that there are things that are already there, but things that we must improve. We must understand that we are lagging behind, not in terms of education. I have seen educated women who sit on boards but do not raise their hand to say anything. And here's what we must understand. The education system is not enough to raise a holistic woman. Most of the work and most of the believing and most of the confidence building comes from older women just like you, who tell little girls to stand up and raise their voice and say something. Who tell little girls that they cannot be less than a man, they should not deem themselves as less of. We as the women have the power to empower each other. I personally do not agree with that PhD syndrome. I am the byproduct of women. I can honestly tell you that women have helped me to be where I am today. And this is why I believe in the power that we have as women to uplift each other. I do believe that we have our problems, but we cannot over-romanticize the idea that women are pulling each other down. There are a lot of women waking up every day to raise another woman. I have gotten opportunities because a woman put in a good word for me. I have gotten opportunities because women were there to defend me. I have gotten opportunities because there were women who were there along the way to warn me of the dangers ahead. And this is the culture that we must breed. We must not over-romanticize the idea of bringing the other woman down, because I honestly believe that there is a greater portion of women who are waking up every day to make the life of another woman better. And we must be able to speak loudly about that and celebrate that. The final thing that I want to say is on the issue of the importance of the internet. In terms of building the capacity of women's visibility, we must understand that the mainstream media is very patriarchal. Even if you call for a meeting, the men are always going to be giving each other more coverage, and the women will get a 2-minute slot while men are getting a 50-minute slot. We must now look for innovative ways to make sure that we tell our stories, because the world is run by storytellers. The world is run by the stories that spread and the stories that are believed. If our stories are not being told the way we want them to be told, if our stories are not getting out there and they're not spreading in the mainstream media, we must then find other creative and innovative ways to capitalize on how best we can tell our story without a man filtering our story. And this is why I'm saying that there is the power in digital marketing. You see, I was doing some research and I found out there is a guy, he is a theoretical physicist. His name is Michael Hobner. Michael Hobner says that there is something called the attention economy. And in the attention economy, what we ought to understand is that the more attention you get, it has the potential to yield into social capital and even economic capital. The internet has laid precedents for that. We can write our narrative. We can write our story on the internet. Now, what we ought to understand is that women have a 12% less internet access, and we must be in a position to make sure that we are technologically savvy. We must have access to these gadgets because they give us access to information. We must have access to these gadgets, social media, to tell our children, particularly our girl children, to use social media, but also to teach them to use it responsibly. The final thing that I want to say is we must also warn our daughters when they're using social media to market themselves and to put their stories out there. That on the internet, there is also gender-based violence on the internet. I was reading a report by the UN Women which said that 1 in 10 women by the time that they are 15 have experienced some form of gender-based violence on the internet. It is quite instrumental that we talk about the gender inequality to internet access, because as long as we do not have access to telling our own stories and we do not control the lines to which we are voicing and echoing our ideas out, we have a problem. So to just close it up, I want to just say that we have to now continue emphasizing the idea that women have what it takes and women can make that impact. Our project now must be our children. The world is gradually becoming sensitive and open towards women. And as the world is becoming like this, there are more opportunities that are going to come for women. But if our daughters are not prepared to take those opportunities, we run the risk that they will miss out. We, the women, have to invest in them to build their confidence. We have to teach them the skills of negotiation. We have to teach them power literacy. We have to tell them that it's okay to love money, to say, I want money. It is okay for a woman to do that. Why is it that when a woman expresses interest in money, we sort of demonize her and prostitute her? People need money to pay bills. People need money to run election campaigns. If we do not have money, then we are not in a position to leverage on how much power we can have. Therefore, we must always be celebrating women in business and encouraging our children to learn about finance and management and saving through simple things that we know as women, through simple things in home economics, through simple things in ISOs. We can actually make the difference. So I will put emphasis on this. The project now should be on the young women, because it is much difficult to tell a much older woman in a board to speak up if she was not in the habit of doing so. But when a skill is taught to a young person who is under the age of 16, neurologists say that they have the advantage of neuroplasticity, in which the skill sticks for a lifetime. Now, I remember there is an American entrepreneur. He once said that you must invest in teaching your children public speaking, because it is a skill that will last you a good 50 years. If we are not able to speak and to speak well, it means that our voices will not be heard, and by virtue will not be counted. So teach your kids to be outspoken. Teach them to know that it is okay to tell a man when you don't want. Teach them to know that it is okay to say no when you don't want. Teach them it is okay to express interest when you do want. Teach your children to have a voice and to make sure that their voice is counted where it matters. We must be focusing on young women. We must be focusing on our little girls. We must be focusing on the future, because as we invest in this generation, we will yield better outcomes in future. Thank you very much.